it's Kira. Today I want to talk about why kids are difficult and what we can do about it. So many of the families who reach out to me have one child in particular who is more challenging, and this has been going on for years. This child is more intense, is more sensitive, feels things deeply, feels criticism deeply, and when this child goes off the rails, it affects everyone. And that's inconvenient, but often the other challenge is that really thoughtful, attuned parents will kind of go off the rails with their child. And this is part of this kind of dance of sensitive kids and sensitive parents. We're feeding off each other's feelings and emotions a lot. So I want to talk about kind of why are some kids more difficult and what can we as thoughtful parents do about it? First, I just want to say, if you have this kind of kid who is really intense and deeply feeling, when they go off the rails, if you are going off the rails too, this can create a lot of shame, right? The parents that I work with are really thoughtful. They've, tried all sorts of things, and they're empathetic and they're caring and they set limits, and so there is a lot of wonderful things that parents are doing, and they seem to still not be working. So let's talk about why these kids are so difficult. Okay, so I want us to think about the emotion of disappointment. Okay, disappointment is when I'm expecting something wonderful and instead I get something I didn't want. Okay, so it's a double whammy. I'm predicting one thing. First of all, I get surprise and shock because it didn't happen. And then I actually get a lot of bad feelings because something I didn't want happened. And this is what I think is going on for a lot of these intense, sensitive kids, is basically life is a series of feeling disappointed, right? You have to leave the park when you don't want to. You have to take a bath when you don't want to. You have to go to bed when you don't want to, and go to school and get in the car, and you have to sit in the left side of the car, but you wanted to sit on the right side, right? It is a series of disappointments. And when we think about the job of our brain is to predict things in order to keep us safe. Every time that the brain predicts one thing and instead it doesn't happen, we get something we didn't want. This is like a double whammy of chemicals in the brain that make us feel bad. And you can imagine for young kids, they don't have the cognitive ability to kind of think through, well, maybe I'll go to the park tomorrow, or maybe at home we can, do a game I really enjoy. So there's a lot of kind of like perspective taking that little kids don't have. And so this emotion of disappointment is all the time when you're a kid, right? You don't have control over anything, right? You go where adults tell you to go and you do what they tell you to do. So there's a lot of kind of repetitive disappointments for kids in feeling like they're out of control. And so what do our kind of deeply feeling kids do? Well, they feel this emotion of disappointment so deeply, they become rigid. They dig in their heels. They create, they're inflexible, right? It needs to be done a certain way. They can't compromise. They become defensive and angry. And these are all kind of ways to cope when you're feeling like life is out of control, right? There's all these unexpected things happening. You don't have control over it. So you dig in your heels, you get kind of more and more rigid. And, even as an adult, the emotion of disappointment is so challenging, right? I wanted something wonderful, and instead I got something I didn't want, right? This is really hard for all of us. So we can kind of have empathy for what these kids are feeling, and they're deeply feeling kids, so they're feeling it really strongly. So let's talk about our strategies. What can we do? Our kids are difficult. What are we gonna do? The most powerful strategy, I really think, is just remembering my kid is having a hard time. They're not giving me a hard time, right? So the kid who's melting down and saying no and kicking and hitting and being a pain looks like they're giving you a hard time. That's how it looks. But if we can remember, oh, my kid is having a hard time. Something about this feels so challenging for my kid. And so this is a really powerful mindset shift to allow us not to take it personally, to kind of access that empathy and compassion. Like, something about this is so challenging. My kid needs my help. And this is a place that can kind of diffuse the power struggle, right? Because otherwise our kid digs in their heels, we dig in our heels, and next thing you know, we're in a big power struggle. So strategy number one, remembering my kid's having a hard time, not giving me a hard time. All right, so strategy number two is validation. This sounds like, I get it, this is really hard. Something about this feels really terrible. And we are basically saying, you make sense, your feelings make sense, your feelings are allowed here, they're accepted. Parents really love their kids unconditionally, but kids often don't feel that. So when kids are having their hardest moment, they are having so much difficulty having big feelings. If we say, go to your room, or we scream at them, what kids feel is the opposite of unconditional love. They feel like their truest feelings, their biggest expressions, who they really are, is not acceptable, not lovable. So validation really is walking the walk, talking the talk of unconditional love. Like, I get it. This is really hard for you. I get it. There's nothing wrong with your big feelings. So that's strategy number two, validation. Strategy number three, the final one, is the calm pilot. And I really love this. This is the idea that we are the calm pilot, our child is the passenger, and there's some turbulence. The turbulence is our kids' big feelings. They don't want to leave the park. They don't want to get out of the bathtub. They, whatever the challenge is. And we're the calm pilot, okay? We got this. We have a plan. The calm pilot is they don't take the turbulence personally. The calm pilot is not there to fix the turbulence. They talk in a very low, calm way. I'm putting the fasten seatbelt light on. I'll let you know when it's safe to move around the cabin. And this is basically our reminder that it's not our job to fix our kids' big feelings. Of course your kid wants to stay at the park longer. Of course your kid doesn't want to get out of the bathtub. Like, all of that makes sense, and it's not personal, right? We got this. The calm pilot is just has a really calming way of letting the kid know that this is going to be okay. And so I love that analogy for us to just remind ourselves that our job is not to fix the turbulence. Our job is not to fix our kids' big feelings. It is just to be this kind of calm, supportive presence who has a plan. Now, if you're saying, yes, I have a challenging kid, yes, my kid's really difficult, this all makes sense, and we are stuck in this power struggle. We get into these situations where my kid goes nuclear and then I go nuclear. Like, I get it. That totally makes sense too. Please reach out. We will schedule a phone call, and we will talk about how to get you more peace and harmony in your home, because these kind of deeply feeling intense kids can be really challenging to parent. I get it. All right. Talk soon.